Welcome back to ShePropTalk. I'm Beverly from Down and Creative Studios, and today I have a couple of amazing guests, and we're going to be talking more about costume contests. Today I have Tiphani from Pros and Cons Cosplay. Hi, Tiphani.
Hey.
And I have Mandi from Teca Cosplay.
Hello.
Hey, Mandi. How you doing today?
It's cold. I'm good.
Or tonight, I guess. It's evening for everybody. We are spread across the country right now. So we're all in different time zones.
Yes.
Yay, technology.
Yeah.
Woo, large country.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining me to talk a little bit further about this subject. We had my last episode, I had Cowboy Crunchies talking with me about cosplay contests. And I am really excited to extend this conversation with the two of you because you two are experts in not just cosplay contests and being competitors, but I also have Tiphani, who is the founder of the Cosplay Contest Support Group.
Yeah.
So, Tiphani, can you tell me a little bit about the Cosplay Contest Support Group? Like, what is it? What inspired you to create this group?
Yeah, good question. So I wanted a group of a place where we could just kind of talk with other people that were like-minded in the contest scene. I've been cosplaying for a really long time and doing contests for a while too, but I just kind of felt like all the other competitors were kind of fragmented around the internet, and it was like really hard to get specific information from different people. So having one group where we could all talk together was really awesome. So I thought, why not make a Facebook group? There's Facebook groups for everything. And so it was partially that, and then partially I saw a lot of misinformation about how costume contests are run and what goes into costume contests, kind of a lot of information going around. And so I was like, it would be really great to have one space where we can have people that are seasoned competitors, newbies, judges, contest runners, that we can all get together and just kind of talk and discuss about the community, what you should expect at a cosplay contest, and really kind of break that down. There's a lot of people that are afraid of competing. And like my other hat is that I'm also one of the admins for the POC cosplayers group. And I noticed a lot of people in that group were also afraid of competing and what costume contests meant. So I thought this would be a really great way to both extend my love of diversity and inclusion and then also cosplay contests and get a bunch of different people that are professionals, or I shouldn't say professionals, but very seasoned folks together to have these conversations.
Yeah, I think it's a really important resource that that you are providing. And this is on Facebook, is that correct?
It is, yes. It's a Facebook group.
Okay, perfect. Can anyone join?
You can.
Yeah.
It is. We just ask that you're, a cosplayer interested in cosplay contests. I have intro questions that, make sure that you're not a terrible human being. I have a zero tolerance for bigotry and discrimination of whatsoever. So those are really the two requirements that you're in: an interest in cosplay contests and, not a bigot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm really glad to see more groups requiring that kind of thing. It's trying to make that culture a lot less tolerable, and it's really important. So thank you for fostering such a wonderful community. So yeah, I was poking around in the group. Somebody in the SheProp group turned me on to your group, and I was really happy to find it because I don't think that there are a lot of resources for people who want to compete out there. It's certainly not people that you can just go in and ask questions or get help from people who are experienced, like you are. And so what are some of the frequently asked questions and topics that you see a lot of people bringing up in the group?
Oh boy, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
Pare it down. The biggest one we get are, what are judges looking for in costume contests? And I think you talked a little bit about that last week about what judges specifically want you to do to make a successful costume. What sandbagging is, which there's a couple of definitions. It was like we answer a sandbagging question once a week.
Yeah.
And then maybe
Colored contacts.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Contacts.
Really?
I think that wraps into what the judges are looking for, like how are you being judged kind of thing. The accuracy question. What goes into what is it? Like a work in progress book used to be a big one. So eventually just made a post and pinned it to the page. This is what goes in a progress book. We don't have 50 questions a week asking about that. But yeah, I think those are probably the big ones. Mandi, do you notice any? Did I miss one?
Presentation occasionally comes up. Usually, yeah, I would say presentation. Sometimes it goes in waves. It's kind of interesting because and I don't know if it's, people start thinking about it because they see someone else post about it, but we usually get the same topic, I feel like, for a month, and then we kind of move on to a different topic. But yeah, a couple of months ago, it was all about how do I do my presentation? How do I do a skit for this? What do I do? What do I not do? Which is partly about what judges look for, but sometimes presentation seems to be a topic all unto itself.
And when you say presentation, are you referring to someone putting together a skit for a masquerade, or the presentation meaning what they're bringing to the judges when they're being judged? Both.
I was more talking about presentation on stage.
Okay.
But we certainly do, along with the progress books, we do get, I especially like people who are like, I'm shy, I'm scared of choking while in the in the judges room. How do I not get too scared? But yeah, and maybe also I'm a cosplayer who, I'm a competitive cosplayer who loves presentation, so I tend to zero in on those posts. So that might be more my selection bias of being like, ooh, something I can respond to.
No, I think so. I think you're right. That right on. They do ask a lot about how do I work my costume on stage? How much of this is actually going to judging? Yada yada, back and forth. People that are question. There's different types of contests. There's so many different types out there, and people that are like, well, what if my performance isn't good? What if I'm a crafter? Or what if I'm a performer, not a crafter? Like, which one gets weighed where, and how do I compete, and how do I impress everyone? So, yeah, we get those questions often.
Yeah. It's cosplay contests are so vastly different depending on where you are and how big they are, and how long they've been around for, and who is drafting up the cosplay contest rules. Can we talk a little bit about the creation of the cosplay contest rules? Because they are so different. What have you noticed that has changed over the last handful of years? Because I know that you both have been doing this for quite some time. So interested to see your opinions and your thoughts on that.
I think it's so different. And then when I first started competing, at first it was like, okay, well, if you've won an award, then any kind of award, then you're in this category. But now it's a little bit more nuanced. So if you have I guess we should start with kind of the conversation about classes, beginner, intermediate, or masters, as it were. And it used to be just if you've won anything, then that puts you up in the next highest class. So if you're a beginner and have won any kind of award, now you're an intermediate. But now we have a little bit more nuance. So if you've won a Judge's Choice Award, which is a minor award, maybe you need a couple of those before you can move up to the next class. And I think that helps because we have so many different types of competitors coming in at all different levels, and every convention is different in how they rank things. So somebody that wins, a Judge's Choice Award, it's kind of unfair to pair them against somebody that's competing for a really long time. So it's kind of nice to have some more nuance in there. I'm a director for actually a couple of conventions for cosplay contests, so I've had the pleasure of writing rules. And, I like
pleasure.
I'm a rulesy person in real life, so I kind of like them. But you have to negotiate what's happening in the culture, and then also maintaining integrity of the contest. So, and then what's good for your region and your area. So, for example, Mandi and I, we had this conversation a while back about the cosplay culture of the area. I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Kansas right now. And I think by and large, we tend to be craftsmanship focused here, but maybe on the coasts, performance sometimes tends to be a little bit more of an important factor. So this is just kind of my observation for what I've seen. You can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I've just seen we tend to focus a bit more on craftsmanship here in the Midwest, I think. Not that there aren't performance awards and that they're not perfectly great performers here. But so then, my upbringing is all craftsmanship. So we kind of make the most rules for that. But yeah, I think it depends on what serves your community. So what works for my conventions won't work for Mandi's cons, and for what works for the big ones like San Diego Comic-Con. So you have to kind of keep all that stuff in mind.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are frustrated when they go to a convention and the rules are totally different, or somebody wins when they think that it's, that shouldn't have been that way, which happens all the time anyway. But Yeah, that's interesting.
But I think there's actually, I think having a bunch of different contests is a good thing. And I know it gets frustrating, but to be completely frank, if you've read the rules like you should know exactly what you're getting into. Like if you read the rules and there's nothing in there about, this is how you register for prejudging, or this is how much of your costume you have to make to qualify to enter, then you're like, okay, we're going into the Wild West. It's whatever anyone brings up. And if that's a contest for you or not. But by having a spread of different contests, and yes, I understand that traveling is not everyone can do that, but cosplay is kind of, not everyone has the ability to do that. So contests are even more a little bit of that. But that gives a spread for, people who don't want to make their outfit. They just want to be able, I have a couple of friends who were like, all they wanted to do was dance. They loved Love Live, and all they wanted to do was have a stage and a way that they could make, a dance presentation that they could do on a stage. And contest was the only way they could do that. And you find a contest that is fine with you. Oh, no, we Tauboed these and we'll totally tell the judges, but we still want to be able to show ourselves, show our dances off that we've worked really hard on. And having a spread hits that many more people and that many more cosplayers, because there's so many aspects to cosplay that people can enjoy in different ways, that by having a spread of different contests, you can hit all of those as well. Even if they don't win anything, even if it's just to show off. And be able to say, this is what I love, this is the fandom I'm in, and I want to, celebrate it with everyone. It's a great place to do that.
I totally agree with you. Like, not every contest is for everybody, and that's okay. If you don't like one contest, there's probably another one that's going to suit your fancy, so just go there.
Right, but and Tiffany and I have talked about this too. Just because a contest isn't for you doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just, it's not the right fit for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there are some bad ones, but sometimes it's not always the fact that the contest is bad.
That is true. There are definitely bad contests. But yeah, and this is another thing that we answer in the group a lot too, is like, you know what? If you don't want to do this way, then don't enter this contest. Like, the rules aren't going to change because like two people don't like the way a particular contest is structured. Unless it's fundamentally flawed, like makes no sense. The rules don't make any sense. If it's just a cultural thing or a thing you're not interested in, just go to a different con. And yeah, like Mandi said, traveling is not for everyone, but cosplay contests are a self-elected kind of thing. You don't have to do it if you don't want to do it, and if you can't do it, and that's okay, find another element of cosplay that you can do. But I think you save yourself a whole lot of salt and anger and stress and consternation if you just read the rules first and know what you're getting into before you start signing up.
Right. Rules are there so that everyone understands and they're all on the same page. Yeah, so what would you say to someone who, so this is something that has come up a lot in the SheProp group. And again, this kind of thing happens in waves. We get this question maybe a few times a year. But the whole question about original characters, when you're talking about costumes that are entered into the contest, and when there's an accuracy scale, and I know that this has to do with the rules and everything as well, but can we talk a little bit about original characters and including those in contests?
That is a good question. Probably one of the most hotly debated dead horses we beat in the group all the time. And this is my opinion, and I think I would say, there's a lot of different opinions on this one, but this is my stance, is that there are two different animals. You've got the recreationists who are recreating a work from a source material, I think we could talk about accuracy later and what that means, but basically recreating based off of a licensed or character that has intellectual property versus an original design that somebody has come up with out of their own head. They're just two different animals. Because if you're doing a recreation, you are set by the parameters of that piece. You can't just randomly change your mind to add wings or put lights on it if it doesn't make any sense. That's different than if you're creating your own piece. And you can really, halfway through, you can decide, oh, you know what, this isn't working for me. I'm going to completely change everything and then start over. And you can just say, well, this is part of my original piece. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. I don't believe that. I think that they're both different skill sets, but comparing them is like apples to oranges. And it would tick off the recreationists to have to go against somebody that could have infinite customization ability on an original character. And then the original character component, there's nothing to really base it off of in terms of accuracy, which is what a majority or a good portion of the judging goes for recreations. They're just two different animals. And to avoid that, it's just better to keep them apart. And I think that cosplay contests are changing, and we're seeing more contests that allow that. But I do think I'm comfortable saying a majority of conventions or lean towards recreationists because it's easier to judge. You've got a source material that's right there. I'm not saying that it will never change, but I do think that we're at the place where, they're just two different animals, and to just avoid the argument altogether, they should just be separate.
Yeah. And this is going to be interesting because I'm going to disagree completely.
Oh, here we go.
Fight.
No, but I mean, and it's not, and this is the great thing of like, this is partly cosplay is kind of like just the Wild West for so long that how you kind of think about contests and how contests are run and your thought process about it is so heavily regional and based on your experience of cosplay in the community. I don't want to say you grew up in, but yes, you as a cosplayer, you kind of grew up in and got shown the ropes and how things worked. In Colorado, where I came up as a cosplayer, it was heavily, heavily influenced by the ICG, which is the International Costuming Guild, which was kind of like the costume contest before anime conventions were really decided they wanted to go that way. And when I remember on the podcast you had last time, they were talking about how sci-fi cons really didn't want anything to do with anime conventions, partly because of the crowd and the fact that it was so much younger. And in our region, it was also that our sci-fi con was just like, look, our contest is for the audience. It's not for the costumers. We don't care if you made it. We don't care if, how much time you spent beating. We just care if it looks good on stage. It entertains our audience for an hour. That's all we care. We're not doing craftsmanship. We're not doing any of that. Whereas if you've ever been to something that the International Costuming Guild runs, like Costume Con, there's like 7 different contests and they're like divided by, recreations versus original creations versus historical, where they expect you to hand sew everything if that's how it was done, or
really?
Everyone makes one thing, everyone has the same pattern and you all make something based on that same pattern and you see what everyone comes up with. Yeah, it's great.
That's kind of fun.
It's amazing. And they're almost always, unless it's on like California, they're almost always very small, but anyone you walk through in there is just a master level craftsman almost everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
So I came up with that mindset and I got exposed to that very, very early. And in ICG, original creations and recreationists are often in the same one, unless you're purely historical. If you're like, I'm recreating an Elizabeth I portrait by hand sewing, they're like, okay, we've got a historical section. Please go over here. Yeah. But otherwise, if you're like a recreationist, which is what most cosplayers are, and a recreationist, you have, as Tiphani said, you have like something to go off of. You're not designing it yourself. They are lumped in with people who make their own original designs. And it's just like, battle it out. And I think that comes down to, part of that comes down to your judging criteria. And the difference that how was it explained to me, because as a cosplayer I had only done recreationists and only done costumes like that. So when I went to that, I was like, how does this work? How do you even they've got like Swarovski crystals glued onto every square surface, and I'm a character from Final Fantasy IX, so who just did what is going on. And they kind of explained it to me. It's, look, they have the opportunity to make it however they want. They still have to have reference frame material. They still had to have inspirations that they were going from. And they had the added pressure of, if a judge looks at something, and because how many times have we looked at a cosplay and looked at something on a character and be like, that's dumb. Why would you have that?
Right.
And you're like, well, exactly. If that character has that, it's the stupidest thing, but I guess I'm going to try and make that attempt. It might not be exactly that. I might have to change it because that's not physically possible. But,
right.
But you have that ability to be like, because that's what the art says. And the judges go, yep, you're right. That's what the art says. Okay, I guess I can't say anything against that. Versus if you design your own, the judge can be like, why is this here? And they're like, I put it there. And then the judge is like, well, your design is not great. I'm taking scores down for your design. So I think it's just a mindset again, but that goes back to, what is your cosplay community looking for? Not every community is looking for that type of, or has the judging, the people who have enough experience with that type of how do you weigh those two things? And I think it's kind of like when there was, it's not recent, but a while ago, there was a big hoopla about, how do you judge the sewing versus the armor, because they're different scales.
Yeah.
And some
That's
cons
a hot
decided
topic
that,
in
some
SheProp
cons
too.
decided
Yeah.
we're going to split it up. And some cons are like, no, it's still craftsmanship. It's different techniques, but it's still the basic craftsmanship. It's just like wigs and sewing are completely different, but you're still going to judge those on the same person.
Right.
But I think, it comes down to community and what your judging panel is and how you want to go about that. So original characters, I'm all for. Especially since it gets into such gray zones of like, okay, well, this is a Cinderella inspired kimono. Okay, well, it's kimono. So is it Japanese inspired historical? Or you could say, it's a historical. If you're going to a cosplay, you could say, okay, well, it's a historically inspired Japanese, from a kimono, like an emperor's kimono type of thing that you could go into. With everything, there's a lot of gray area, but original creations don't bother me at all.
Yeah. Well, I guess that brings me to one of the other things I wanted to talk about was so there are judges that are selected by the convention staff. There's somebody on the convention staff that contacts people and says, hey, do you want to be on a cosplay contest judge? How important do you think that those decisions are? Because and how seriously do you think that the coordinators, are they all kind of in on all of this? Do they all know a lot about these kinds of issues?
Yeah, your mileage may vary. I will say I like I said, I direct a couple of shows, and my degree of control over who comes to judge varies between them. But I would say the judges you pick is absolutely critical to having a good show. If it were up to me 100% for everything, I would pick people that were only master level crafters or master level at whatever the criteria is, be that performance or craftsmanship. Because you don't want to have somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about judging your costume. One that affects the quality of the show and it affects their ability to be able to give a good, provide a good service to the contestants. You want
or at least provide a... Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
I get on a tangent. This one is a deep, deep feeling for me. Like having terrible judges ruin your contest. I think everyone that's competed for a while has had the experience that they've had a terrible judge. And you're just like, why are you here? If I know, well, I feel like by and large, you should be at master level because a beginner should not inherently know more than the judge person that's judging them. It can happen, of course, but you want to be able to hit as many areas of expertise and knowledge in an area. You don't want a complete beginner coming in judging your costume because they're not going to know what to look for. I also look for people that aren't pariahs to the community. Like if you're annoying or terrible or rude or a bigot, I don't think judging Michelle. So I want people to come in and feel like they can't be safe or it's not a fair environment to show, be vulnerable, because that's what it is. You're vulnerable. You're showing your craft in front of people, strangers oftentimes, or sometimes your idols or whatever. You want people that are going to create a good, comfortable environment for people to be judged in. So I think the judges you pick at a show are critical. Now, that being said, putting on my showrunner hat, not everything lines up the way you want it to. So sometimes you don't always know who the judges are going to be until after it's time to register. So for a fact, I know there's several people out there that if I knew they were judging, I would drop out of the contest just because I know they're not good at it. But that's not always the case. So I think your job as a showrunner is to create a credible show where you've had a history of inviting judges that are good at their job, good members of the community, and can provide that service and aren't show buddy. I've got so many stories about terrible judges, but create a good environment.
Well, let me ask you another question. Both of you can please chime in here. What constitutes a good judge and what constitutes a bad judge? And we talked kind of extensively, Cowboy Crunchies kind of went over what they would think would be a good, well, I guess they were talking more about good contestants. But yeah, if you could expand just a little bit about what does that mean? A good judge versus a bad judge.
You got to have skills. You can't be a judge and not have a skill set. I think sometimes shows get into the habit of inviting people that are the most famous or have the most cosplayers or just generally good in the community, which is fine for some elements, but you wouldn't want that person judging your craftsmanship if they don't know how to craft. So I think that's first and foremost. When I'm being judged, I like my judges to get up and look at my seams. I threatened more than once. If you don't look at my seams, I will lay on the table and I will lift up my seams for you to see. I wore pants just for this in case this happens. It's my real threat. You got to look at my stuff up close. Of course, there's room in there for if you have a disability or something, but I'm saying in
Sure.
general, they should be examining your stuff up close, asking important questions they need to ask it. I like judges that are, friendly and approachable. If you're kind of standoffish and rude, like I feel like that creates an uncomfortable environment for people.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's generally what I look for.
I would say all of that. Yes. In fact, I've been under Tiffany's skirts and seams many times. But I would also say if you're looking for the ideal, you should have a spread of talents, because most cosplayers, they have something they're really good at. They can do, especially master craftsmanship, they can do everything, but they don't necessarily enjoy doing everything.
Oh, sure.
So they don't do it if they can get away with it. So I think having a spread of talents is really, really important. I also think that there's a difference between crafters and competitor, or like, let me say this, people who are really good crafters are not necessarily competitive cosplayers. And I think that it's very important that, yes, someone might still be able to make something really well, and you can certainly have them on the panel, but I think it is vitally important you have someone who has done cosplay contests for a while, has run the cosplay contest circuit, has gotten out of their state and tried many different levels and many different places, because it's a niche. It's, just like photo shoots, just like social media, cosplay competitions attract a very certain type, and there's considerations that you have to make for a contest that you don't make on a costume otherwise. And I think it's important to also have someone with that eye in it that's looking for those type of adaptations and can either appreciate or pick them out right away.
Yeah, well, those are excellent points. I hadn't even considered some of the things you just hit on. This is really good information. I'm like, you can't see me because we're not doing video chat, but I'm like, I am at the edge of my seat, just like, oh yes, I'm absorbing all of it. And I haven't competed for a while, because I enjoy having that time at a con not competing.
Oh yeah.
But now yeah. Oh my goodness.
Well, WCS was the first time I'd competed in 9 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I was doing industry events for so long. Yeah, so I started competing in 2000. That was when my first competition was. And then I traveled, basically did the con circuit, because back then in the early aughts, there was like 4 contests that were kind of considered the best cosplay contests in the US, and you just kind of traveled to them and you would see the same, competitive groups that would go to all of them, and you'd become really good friends with them, and you'd be like, all right, who's showing up with what now? Oh, that jerk just brought a Gundam. I guess we're hosed, but oh well, have fun. You learn the cosplay contest drinking game. You just, it was just a lot of fun, but after a while you're kind of like, I need a break. But the great thing about contests is you come back, and it can be overwhelming at sometimes if you take a break, because there's so many new techniques and tools and everything, but it's also really inspiring to see how different it's gone, and how what can you take from the new stuff and the new trends and cosplay contests and integrate them into your skill set. So if you fall off the wagon, get back on. It's great.
I fell off. I think I took a hiatus for 4 years, and I don't know. I started 2005, or I don't remember, somewhere around in there. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to college now, so I'm going to get off of this. And then I took a hiatus for a couple of years, and then came back to it after grad school. And I was like, wow, what I was doing at the master level back then wouldn't even place at beginner level here. Oh God. So it was relearning all the way over again, which was great. It was a master inspiration. I got to get back at the master level now. I'm not, I got to reclaim my rightful place in my class. So that was exciting.
Every time Tiffany and her sister compete at the con that my home con, I always message them later. I'm like, you jerks, you hand wefted a wig. Now everyone's going to have it. I don't want to do that.
Oh my gosh, you're that person.
I love crafting. But to be honest, we'd heard, like I said, my usual circuit's the Midwest, but we'd heard about, NDK. And they were like, this used to be a qualifying location for WCS. Or we're well, crap, I'm not going to show up in rags. I got to show out. So that was the first time I'd ever done stock design. And I'm like, oh God, I wouldn't have done it if you don't travel and learn like the rules of other areas, and that your contest level is just different and sometimes higher than what you're used to. So it pushes you to be better. And I'm very appreciative. Like the NDK crowd, it was really fun. It was kind of fun. The whole Midwest delegation came up. We took our friends and swept up some awards, which was pretty cool.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
not that, but
That's
last year
amazing.
they came and threatened to come down here and take our awards, and I was like, bet. Gone. So it started an impromptu regional war between Denver and Kansas.
Yeah, that's how love happens. That's how it works.
It's
That's
awesome.
like if you
I
go,
love it.
like, I mean, I like Anime Expo used to be that crowd, and now so many of like the more established cosplayers are like, I mean, I remember being in a green room with Matt Miller, just shooting the
Oh,
shit while
wow.
we were backstage waiting for our contest to go because he was the cosplayer. And then Charlene Ingram, who was the brand manager for Sailor Moon at Viz, she was a cosplayer that I met
Oh my
through
gosh.
cosplaying contests. I mean, like, there's so many people that you just meet in the green room, and then they just go on to still be in the maybe not the cosplay fandom, but still in the that world. And it's just hilarious
Yeah.
to see where you all end up.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking briefly in the earlier episode about how fun it is just to meet people when you are part of the contest kind of world in
Oh, yeah.
general. Even on day of, just waiting in line for and every line that you have to wait into on the contest day, and how the whole experience is something that a lot of people just enjoy, that experience.
It's
Making friends and seeing people whose work you've been following for a long time. It's, kind of fun.
it takes a special kind of person to want to donate most of their convention time to sitting in a room waiting to hear if your
Right.
costume is good or not. So, like, you
Yeah.
really get to know people on an intimate. Actually, that's where I met Mandy. I think I met you at I forget which no NebCon like many years ago, and not
Yeah.
many. I don't know, several
Well, I
years
mean,
ago.
it was
And
like
you were
2013, I think.
maybe four, yeah, somewhere around in there, I think. Yeah, that's where I met you. And like a lot of my other friend group, I met them in the green room at conventions, and it was just like, chit-chatting about crafting, like what is wrong with us? Why are we back here doing this while everybody else is having fun at the convention? But we're perfectly happy to be back here talking about seams. There's a special kind of person that does that kind of stuff. So you really
That's for
listen
sure.
to
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the group, the cosplay contest support group. So you started this group, Tiffany. You founded it right around the same time SheProp was founded.
oh,
I did my homework, and because I think it was 2000, like March of 2018,
that sounds about right.
and yeah. And I'm curious, and I know that you talked a little bit briefly about it starting, but was there a moment where you decided, like, I need to have a forum, I need to have a space where we can talk about this and we can be together? Was there a moment that became clear to you?
Yeah, I think I spent a little bit of time in the cosplay help and advice group, and every so often there'd be questions about how to compete. And there'd just be a swath of information that would be flying back and forth. And I was like, it'd be really great because this group is cosplay help and advice is mainly for how to obtain costumes, how to make them, where to find
Mm-hmm.
supplies to make your costume or whatever else. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, this is clearly not the forum for this. And there's so many people with a bunch of different opinions that don't really know how contests work. That would be really great to have a space where we could have some informed conversation. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was like my light bulb moment. And then kind of sitting in POC cosplayers, which is my other hat, and people
Mm-hmm.
that would talk about contest stuff here and there. And I'd be like, wow, it'd be really great to have like a space where we could just all talk on the same page with people that have been in like been doing this for a while and give advice when needed or listen. So yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I just thought that was so interesting that we kind of started our groups at the same time.
I didn't even
Um,
think about SheProp until I think it was Cosplay Help and Advice where I don't know, maybe it was there was another Facebook group that's like craftsmanship oriented that I won't mention that tends to be kind of toxic and I just didn't want to be in and have like more expert knowledge of crafting. And then somebody
yeah.
mentioned SheProp's a great place for that. So then I discovered SheProp. So it was like a really nice little little way to
Yay.
check out all those cosplay
Yeah.
groups.
Yeah, I love it. And I was thinking the other day, now that we have some of these resources, like your group and my group and some of the other really actual helpful groups that do not tolerate rude people and bigotry and all of that negative stuff. How much better my cosplay day has become. Like when you surround yourself with good people and good conversations, how much that can benefit everyone. I'm wondering how have you seen your group evolve since you started it, and how has that had an effect on the both of you? Has it affected your cosplay life at all, or the way that you interact with other cosplayers? I hope that question is clear.
It's been a long time since I've been a beginner. So hearing some of the questions that people have has made me a better showrunner, because it's helped me figure out, well, this is clearly a question that people are having. Let me clarify that in the rules. So I think I've been finding that to be an invaluable lesson from the group. Okay, these are questions that people have that I would not have thought would have been a question just because I've just been doing it for so long. So I can very easily clarify things in the rules of the contest that I run. A lot of it was questions about how accuracy works or how judging works and all that good stuff. And I thought, well, this is a great place where I could make people who have a lot of fear about judging not be afraid anymore by just clarifying something. So I think that's been really good. And it's also really great to hear from other people that have different perspectives, like Mandi, and there's Lauren's in there, a couple of my other friends from the circuit, Janella, and I think, what is her name? I'm going to blank on names. I'm just terrible at that. But
it's okay.
There's a lot of other people in the group who have either been following or have known about their skills. So it's just really great hearing their perspectives, and also hearing from perspectives from around the country. Like I said, I'm in the Midwest. I travel a little bit here and there, but it's also great about hearing from people that grow up in different cosplay contest environments and how they run things. So overall, I feel like it's really helpful for me to have knowledge of what's going on around the country and around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And I think it's important to, I'm glad to hear someone is really trying to make those changes and to be those changes and to present these topics to everyone, to remind everyone that this is a growing process. This is an evolving process, and the conversations can't stop. We can't have just one way of doing everything, because everything is changing around us, and we have to be able to adapt and to fold everybody into it and take everyone along with us along the way.
Yeah, I host a lot of panels, and most of them are on cosplay contests and cosplay presentations when I guest somewhere. But I think it's also, specifically for me, it's made me think about I remember on your podcast last time, one thing that really struck me is I think it was Cowbutt Crunchies who said, we know a novice when we see one, and we know a journeyman, or whatever they're calling it, the individual one or the middle one, intermediate. We know them when we see them. And I think that's very true of a lot of judges, of I know it when I see it, but that's very, that doesn't help a novice who's how do I get out of being a novice? You're
right.
Try harder. No, no. And it's not that they don't try hard. No. That's the thing. Cause you're it's not that you're not trying hard enough. I can clearly see you're trying hard enough. And I think it's made me think about very hard about how I give advice, because I think that's one of the problems, not problems in the group, but that's one of the issues I've realized that have come up in the group through the best of intentions, is that the advice you would give a novice is not the advice you would give a master. And, but yes, but on the same note, it is the same advice. So for the example, I use food a lot when it's food euphemisms to explain cosplay a lot, because it seems to be easier. Masters are cooking your Thanksgiving dinner. They're cooking everything and anything. Novices, they eventually want to look up to the Thanksgiving dinner, but they're not going to get there. So you need to focus. What do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus on the baked potatoes? Do you want to focus on the turkey? We can give you all the advice for all of the different pieces, but you're going to get overwhelmed. And you certainly don't need to be able to cook all the dishes as a novice. Just focus on one, or focus on not burning down the kitchen and getting a couple out the door. There's a lot of different ways you can move towards the Thanksgiving dinner. But all of that advice is helpful. You just have to be able to take it. So I think I've been much more mindful of being gentle with advice. I'm going to give you a lot of advice if you want to, or what makes you happy, what excites you, what will keep you going with this hobby, what keeps you, if you, as you said before, if you're miserable, this is not going to go well at all. So what can you do that is not miserable for you that you're going to enjoy? And that's the advice we can give you to really take and start running with. Because at a novice, we're not trying to get you to the best, most perfect costume. We're trying to get you excited so you can keep pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's really great advice. I don't think that I really thought about it in that way, that everyone, depending on where you're at, that needs a different level of, well, not level of advice, but they're looking at things very differently, and their experiences are very different. And so, don't throw the whole Thanksgiving meal at them all at once, because that's, or expect that they would be able to make that after just learning how to boil water.
Well, and that's the thing, as a judge, you don't think about it. You're like, of course I'm not expecting them to get the whole Thanksgiving dinner. But to the novice hearing that, they're like, oh my God, I have to do all these things I'm not doing. Oh my God. And then they're done. They're done for contest for a long while, if not forever, because you've scared them off.
And I think this current not climate of cosplay, but that with all of the different techniques and tools and materials and things that we have access to, is very, very overwhelming. We get a lot of questions in SheProp from people who are wondering how they can start cosplaying, how they can start making this. This is my first costume, and I've never made anything before, but I want to make this big giant thing with wings, and I want to make it in time for like this competition next year. Where do I start?
Woo!
So we do get some questions, and I like you. I just want them to not get so overwhelmed that they rage quit.
Right. Yeah.
I know that I would definitely. Like, I can't learn LEDs and learn how to cut EVA foam in the same week. Like, that's just not my thing. It's just not fair to ask myself to do that. I think a lot of people put a lot of stress on themselves, high expectations on themselves to be at that master level when they're seeing all the shiny big builds.
Yeah, exactly. I think that beginner class, you can use that to decide if you even like competing, because it only gets intense from there. I don't know. I have a little bit of an Icarus complex myself, in that I will just do all sorts of stuff, even though I know it's out of my skill range, just because I like to see if I can. Which means sometimes I fly too close to the sun and it crashes and burns.
I think every master cosplayer is like that, or master level cosplayer, and that's because you enjoy it. Like, you're like, well, I'm gonna kill myself, but I'm gonna love every minute of it. Whee!
Exactly.
But like, not, yeah,
Beginners, they don't,
and there's
not like
and that's why most people find green rooms so much fun, because that breed of cosplayer, like someone who truly enjoys that, just murdering themselves on a time budget, knowing you're going up against everyone's else best plan to murder themselves. I mean, that is not for everyone, but if you find people who are like that, I can almost guarantee 9 times out of 10, they're going to be one of your favorite cosplay people in general. They're just a certain personality type, a certain energy type that you will go perfectly with. And that's why so many cosplayers are like, I mean, the awards, yes, they're great, but it's the green room that makes it.
Right.
Exactly. If you didn't like other things other than winning, because you're not going to win everything, and that's just a fact. You have to like also enjoy the process, the people that you're with, the community aspect of it. Like, you got to find other things that you enjoy in it outside of awards. Like, don't get me wrong, I love awards. I'm a competitive person, but you don't. That's not the be all end all of cosplay contests.
Yeah. I think that I was into competing quite often, and then there was one Emerald City. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to compete this year. I'm just going to enjoy it. And I really liked that. I was like, oh, okay, I kind of really dig this. I'm comfortable. I'm out of my costume. I get to watch everybody else on stage now. I get to, record things for my friends as they do crazy things on stage and share it with them later. It's like it became a different kind of experience for me. Although now that I've done 2 episodes at this point about competitions, now I'm like, oh, I kind of want to compete again.
That would be awesome. Please do.
I mean, if anything, just to have fun and twirl around on a stage in probably some bulky armor.
Yeah, do it. Well, and that's a great advice. Go and watch a contest is also great advice for people who want to get into it. They're like, I don't know where I start. And I'm like, okay, calm down. Just 1 year, just go watch it, because that'll set your sights on what is realistic. Because I think a lot of, with the internet the way it is and social media the way it is, you'll see, master level cosplayers or cosplayers who are really amazing at photo shoots, which are not necessarily the same thing. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Right. But you get a very distorted idea of what's going to be in the contest. So once you go to the contest and you see what does a novice look like? What does an intermediate like? It becomes a lot less scary because your point of reference is much more realistic. If you're going into a contest for the first time and have never seen one, you're going to panic. Just go watch one, see if you enjoy watching one, then go join it.
That's excellent advice. Listeners, that's great advice. That's really great advice.
And look at what kind of pieces in each category. So that way you're like, okay, well, I can see this is what a beginner winner looks like, at least for this show. So this is what an intermediate's doing, and this is what a master's doing. Then it kind of helps you calibrate and decide what it is that you should bring for your own costume piece if you're gunning for the prize.
Yeah, and there's a difference. There's a difference also in mindset between I'm going for gold and I'm going for fun. I mean, you should always be going for fun, but there's a slightly different advice to give if you're going for gold. So,
right, exactly. Well, this has been such an informative chat. Thank you so much for kind of blowing my mind on a few of these things. I'm always learning, and part of this podcast for me is to get to chat with people that I don't know that I would normally talk to, because I don't live in the same state and I might not necessarily go to the same cons. But this is a subject that I've been really wanting to get a little bit more in depth on, and it's been awesome talking to the both of you about all of this. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us. Do you want to go over the big elephant in the room before we quit, though? Sandbagging?
Yes, let's do it. Yep.
Sandbagging. Okay, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So what is sandbagging? Let's talk about it.
Sandbagging, as far as I know, and I might not be wrong, but sandbagging, the term, came from the International Costuming Guild rules. And there's kind of the definition of sandbagging, and then over time there's kind of been a small caveat of this is also called sandbagging, but is not always. So we'll start with the main one. The sandbagging is if you have won a major award in an outfit, and you take that same outfit without changing it to a same size contest or smaller and enter at the same level, that's called sandbagging. So basically, let me give an example. So let's say that we'll do Sailor Moon. For some reason, I won Sailor Moon. I'm in Sailor Moon. And I enter it at my local convention, NDK, and I win first place masters. Let's say not best in show, but first place masters, which is still considered a top award. And then I took it to a little small con. We'll use NebCon, which is a convention up in Nebraska, which is much smaller, and went there and entered the same outfit, not changing anything. That's sandbagging, because you've already won an award. You're going to a much smaller convention, a much less competitive pool, and it's a costume that's already been awarded a top award. That's called sandbagging. The caveat of that is that if I had taken that same outfit and, say, went to Anime Expo, which is a much larger, much more competitive, not as bad, but you better tell the con coordinator that you have won an award and where it was, because they might still tell you no. But you have a chance. You always go to it's a big fish, small pond. You always have to be going to a bigger pond, or you better be remaking the costume. The other kind of side asterisk of what people sometimes also consider sandbagging is if you either knowingly enter at the wrong level. So I would consider myself a master level competitive cosplayer. If I went to a convention and entered at intermediate or beginning, that's sandbagging because you're being a jerk just to win awards. And then if it sometimes is also considered sandbagging if, since I'm a master level and I've done a bunch of places of just competing at all at a smaller convention. That's not, that's more of like a, is it tacky? Is it, why are you competing at a small one when you're beating up all these poor novices? Why are you doing this? So that's more considered tacky than actually sandbagging, but I've seen that called sandbagging. It's basically any time that you knowingly try to put yourself at an advantage when you know you shouldn't, just to get awards.
Nobody likes that kind of thing. And I guess in discussions that I've seen online about the topic, the people who are not defending it, but they're bringing up other aspects like, well, if it's not a rule in the contest, then should it be allowed? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is my stance on it as like when I'm running shows, I like things to be as easy as possible. So I just ban everything that if you've won a category or a major award for it, regardless of the size of the contest, you can't enter it because the internet will fly away and take things. So I just
doesn't want to deal with the emails.
I just don't want to deal with it. I'm too busy. So, and I think it makes it hard. So I personally don't consider it sandbagging I don't believe in unwritten rules. So if it's not a rule, then it's on the table, regardless of what the community feels about it. And we know the court of public opinion is different than what is law, oftentimes, or I guess rules or policy. So I'm not going to squawk too much if it is not a rule. Granted, the internet will care. They will drag you across the galaxy if you try it. So from that standpoint alone, I would just avoid doing it altogether. But you can't get too mad at somebody if it's not a rule. And so I think there's some gray area there. And I know there's been some arguments in the group of like, well, I spent a lot of money and time on this costume. I should be able to compete it more than once. But my answer to that is that cosplay is, again, a self-elected thing. You put in the money that you can afford to. You put in the time that you can afford to do, the energy. And I get it. It sucks if you can only win one award in the thing. But that's also why you kind of, at least for me, I'm a little bit strategic about the contests I enter. If I know I only have one shot at placing, then I'm not going to enter at a library con where my prize is Halloween candy. So I think that's something that I want. So it's kind of like, you got to like think about where you're going to go with your costume, what is it you want to do. And so, yeah, I think that the sandbagging thing, people, again, there's community standards, which is, you don't enter the same costume twice. And people get very angry when they don't win things or if they see something they deem to be unjust. There was an issue in the group a couple of months ago, I want to say, where somebody was accused of sandbagging, but they really weren't because it wasn't a rule. They had been following the rules. There was no rule against them not competing in a category award-winning piece, and so they got angry, and like all this stuff kind of went through. And like, well, it wasn't a rule, so you can't expect people to have the same standards. We can't even agree on the same definition of what sandbagging is. It's different from region. When I came up, it was about entering, as a master, entering at a beginner level. But of course, that definition, it just depends. We can't even agree on whether it's a cosplay contest or a masquerade. So you can't I just feel like you got to go with what the rules say.
Yeah. I would agree. There was DreamHack. The DreamHack came to Denver one time, and I had a friend who was working, and he's like, please compete. I'm like, I don't have anything new. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Please we need entries. And so like I read the rules, and sure enough, there was no sandbagging rule. And I emailed them, and I even emailed them. And I'm like, so yeah, do you want me to bring something that's already won? Is that against the rules? They're like, oh my God, no, we just want the biggest and prettiest on the stage just so it's more entertaining. And I was like, all right, fine. I guess I'll bring something I won. But I mean, so I agree. Sometimes the contests knowingly do that. Sometimes they don't knowingly do that. And then that's when you reach out to them and they're like, hey, maybe you should have this be a rule next year. But I completely agree. If it's not in the rules, then everyone's on the same playing field. So if you have read the rules, as you should, and as the number one most recommended advice that anyone will give on the comm is that read the rules. Step one, read the rules. Step two, read the rules again. If it's not in the rules, that everyone's still on the same playing field. And that's the main thing about sandbagging, is making sure that it's still an even and fair playing field that encourages people to still be in contest, because it's not always about the top winner. It's about, if it was just about, one winner take all, we just want to award the best one. There's no reason we would give awards for novices. There's no reason we would give awards for intermediate, but it's not about that. Costume contests haven't been about that for a very long time. It's about fostering a community that supports and encourages and gives an outlet to recognize craftsmanship, which is not something that is always easily done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very well said. Very important to know. So some closing thoughts. I'm interested in knowing if you could have 2 or 3 rules that are the same, what would you like to see?
I would say straight out the gate, rules that prohibit discriminatory practices. If you show up in blackface, you should be banned. I can rant about that for days, but nothing that depicts demeaning, like disgusting caricatures of people based off of your race, sexuality, religion, none of that stuff should be allowed. I wish every contest would have some kind of diversity statement that they adhere to and will insta-ban you if you show up in something like that. I would think that would make a lot of people more comfortable, because I kind of polled the POC group about this, and among other things, one of the biggest concerns was they're like, I'm worried about not winning an award because I don't canonically match the character because of my race or my body type, whatever have you. And that's so sad. And, you know, I'm Black. I compete in characters that are outside of my race all the time. And I mean, it's happened once. I did get DQ'd, not DQ'd, prohibited from winning an award because of my race. And that was said to me to my face. And yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It wasn't a great feeling.
Jesus.
So
again, going back to so important having good judges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This person was a terrible.
Good God.
One of my terrible judge stories. But yeah. So those kinds of things I think are absolutely inherent to have in the cosplay contest rules. I would also say having some kind of I don't know. I guess I'm on the fence about having. Well, I guess I wish people would be more specific about clarifying what kind of contest it is. Is this a craftsmanship contest? Is this a performance contest? Is this a big shiny contest where you just walk across the stage? There's no craftsmanship whatsoever. It's just the biggest and shiniest costume that's there. Fine, just let me know so that way I know before I put a bunch of energy into competing there. I love very clear rules. Those are probably the two biggest ones, because I like variety. I like a variety of things. Sometimes I want to perform and sometimes I just want to craft. So having that ability to do either, I think, is fun. So
like a scoring, stated scoring criteria.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be specific. Yeah. Okay, well, this is a majority craftsmanship contest. Cool, I know what to do. So yeah, I like those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Other than co-signing all of those, especially the first one. Oh my gosh. Mine would probably be divisions, like skill divisions. And the reason I say that is because skill divisions are actually fairly newish. They weren't always, especially in anime cons, there weren't always skill divisions. And there's nothing so frustrating than losing to a 3-year-old because they're adorable.
The 3-year-olds always win.
They always win. Why are they in the
Always.
contest? So I would say divisions, and the nice thing about divisions is they're adaptable depending on anything of what walks in the door. As you know, Cowboy Crunchies was mentioning, or I think it was her. Them. But the judges can move you around depending on what walks in the door at that contest. Yeah. So, but it allows you to better foster individual skill levels rather than winner take all. So I think having skill divisions, even if they're not universal, like there's no definition that can be universally defined about what a skill division is, I think having skill divisions is important because you can adapt them to suit your own needs and your own community.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that is important as well. I think it's really important. And also from a judge's perspective, it's kind of nice to be able to use that as a guideline, for sure.
I agree. Makes it easier. Oh God. Okay. Yeah. You got to beginners now. I know what to look for.
Definitely. Well, so what is next for the both of you? What do you have coming up?
Oh boy, we are in contests, both running and competing. So I have 2 contests coming up that we're directing. Right? They're actually back to back. I'm crying. So March, I'm just going to take off work the entirety of March. Just going to be not going to be there, which isn't true. But NakaCon is, I take that back. First contest we're probably going to hit up is C2E2. So we're going to check that out. And then NakaCon, which is my home con, my first convention, is in March, the second week of March. And then Planet Comic-Con is the other contest that I run, and we'll be there. I co-run it with my sister, both Naka and Planet. Okay. That's the week after that. So we'll be doing those contests.
Oh my gosh.
And then
yeah, you're gonna
at the end of March.
You're gonna be pretty busy.
Oh yeah, March is gonna be. If no one hears from me in March, that's why I'm just in contest hell. I'm competing at the end of March, so should be a good month.
Yeah.
How far are you on your costume?
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that, or is that all kind of under lock and key?
I'll keep what I'm making it the secret, but I currently have a giant piece of paper on my wall with my body sketched out on it, so I can proportion this costume.
Yeah, proportioning.
Oh yeah, Nice.
I made myself, so I've got like a bust sitting on the floor glaring at me. Why don't you work on something? Yeah, it should be interesting. I'm going out of my comfort zone. I've done a lot of ball gowns, so now I'm going to try and do something a little different.
Awesome. And what do you have on your plate coming up?
So I was really busy because I was helping work for Sailor Moon for about 5 years, and now that Stars is out, I'm kind of fancy free. Plus, I have the World Cosplay Summit coming up in July, August of next year. So we have 3 outfits that we're making, and then in addition to that, we have our competition outfit that we're making, and we are changing it from what we qualified with. So yeah,
that is exciting. Oh my gosh.
I'll be more excited when it's done. Right now it's just terror.
But you're having fun, right? That's the whole point of it, right? You're having fun?
I am masochistically having fun. No, yeah. So right now we're kind of doing the fun phase, because the fun phase for me is like planning, shopping, fun, making, panic-driven, meltdown, performing, fun.
Same.
So
sounds familiar.
We're in the buying phase, which we really need to be. We're doing some of the making phase, but we probably should be doing it more right now. But yeah, no, it's. I'm excited. World Cosplay Summit is one of the biggest contests in the world, if not the biggest contest in the world. And you have 52 countries being their biggest and baddest and best at you. And many of us have a year plus to plan for it. So that's slightly terrifying, especially since it's like, I don't know if you know anything about the World Cosplay Summit, but there's 2 people, no stage hands, 3 stage props. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's all you can have. No stage hands to help you on, no stage hands to move things around, only the 2 of you, the duos. So there's a lot of love stories, and there's a lot of people dying, because that's about all you can do with 2 people. So not only do you have to come up with a skit with 2 people, you have to come up with a skit that no one has seen when the contest has been running for 8-10 years, something like that. So yeah, there's...
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Well, I can't wait to catch up with that after that happens, because I'm imagining that you have to keep everything kind of on the DL until then. Is this all in secret?
No one cares. No, I can tell you.
No one cares.
We've kind of said on our Instagram, but we're doing characters from Grand Blue Fantasy, which is a MOBA game that also has an anime that's very good.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing.
Thank you.
We're cheering for you. I'm so excited.
Oh and when is that?
Oh, it is July, August. So we've got a while.
I'll probably got 6 months.
Yeah. Don't say that, please.
Sorry.
Meltdown. No.
That was really mean of me to do to you. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So we've got a while, and we've been working on it since we got picked at Anime Expo in July, since we were selected. So we're already pretty well down the road, especially on our skit presentation. But that's the fun thing. Because one thing that's changed over the years is I think cosplay contests specifically have switched more to heavy craftsmanship, and presentation has gone by the wayside. And I love the presentation part of costume contests. So it's been kind of a bummer to see it go that way for me personally.
I think it's different here in the States versus internationally, because internationally the game is mostly presentation, it seems like, at least in the European circuits. But here, it's it makes my craft part very happy, but I understand.
Yeah, and I used to run a major Comic-Con cosplay contest, and I just got out of it because they didn't really want it. They wanted to have a more audience focused contest, and that was not the showrunner I was going to be. So, but I've missed the presentation part. So I'm excited that WCS is not 100% presentation, but it's much more presentation weighted than a lot of US contests are. So that's very exciting for me because I get to stretch those cosplay competition muscles that I don't always get to use all the time.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, where can our listeners find both of you online if they want to catch up with your work and follow things as you are working on stuff?
Yeah, I'll probably be panicking posting come March anyway. That's what I tend to do. On Facebook, my sister and I were Pros and Cons Cosplay on Facebook and Pros and Cons Cosplay on Instagram. If you just want to hear me screaming into the void on Twitter, my cosplay handle is Complex Icarus. which is a nod to my Icarus complex of craftsmanship. So, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
I do have a Facebook. I don't update it as much. You can much more find me on Instagram at Teca Cosplay, or you can follow our WCS duo at Birds of Cosplay. And we haven't updated a whole bunch since Anime Expo, but there's about to be a flood of progress photos coming up in the next couple of months. So check us out there.
My gosh. I can't wait to go do exactly that. That's going to be awesome. Oh, and where can people find the Cosplay Contest Support Group?
Yes, we are on Facebook at Cosplay Contest Support Group. And there's also a secondary one for showrunners. So if you're a cosplay contest director, it's Cosplay Contest Runners Assemble, which my sister runs. So it's a place where we can chit-chat about how to run costume contests, how to create equitable rules, and all that good stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Those are really great resources. So yeah, this has been super, super informative. And I knew that we were going to do this. We totally ran over the time frame that I wanted to stay within. But that always happens. I think it's just a pipe dream of mine to keep these episodes short. That's never going to happen. But I had a lot of fun talking with you both. Thank you so much again for joining me.
Thanks for having us. This was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I love talking.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to see your progress on your projects and to see you in the group. I'm definitely going to go check that out a little bit more and participate. Oh, and now my cat is trying to throw herself out of my window. So I think we're probably going to go now. Let me go grab you. Stop it. Oh my goodness.
No.
She's just a nightmare, aren't you? Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that was
just
adorable.
in time. Just in time to say thanks for listening, everybody. And again, my name is Beverly down in Creative Studios, and you can find our SheProp group on Facebook, and you can find us on Instagram and Twitter. And I just started the YouTube channel up, so all of these episodes are going to be up there as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tiphani and Mandi. Thank you very, very much for joining me.
Absolutely.
And
thank you.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.